This interview is a work of fiction and intended solely for entertainment purposes. The responses attributed to René Descartes are entirely imagined, and any resemblance to real events or persons, living or deceased, is purely coincidental. The content presented here is not meant to convey actual historical facts or suggest supernatural communication with the dead.
Welcome to the Afterwords, where we dive into hypothetical conversations with some of history's most profound figures. Today, we're speaking with none other than René Descartes, the French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist, often considered the father of modern philosophy. Known for his famous phrase, Cogito, Ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, Descartes transformed the way we approach the very nature of knowledge and existence. His works laid the foundation for rationalism, influencing both philosophy and the sciences for centuries to come. But today we ask, what would Descartes think if he could see the world now? How would he respond to modern questions about knowledge, existence, and society? We'll explore all this, plus some lesser-known aspects of his life that might surprise you.
If you could witness today's world, what aspect of modern society would shock you the most, and why?
In truth, what would shock me most is the prevalence of distraction. When I lived, I sought clarity through rigorous methodical doubt and reflection. In today's world, I see much distraction that draws people away from thinking deeply. I am astonished by how information flows unceasingly, particularly through your internet, a creation of unparalleled magnitude, and yet it floods the mind with opinions, half-truths, and fleeting moments of attention. The pace at which people form conclusions is troubling to me. Where is the time to doubt, to ponder, to clear the fog and seek truth? I would have seen the internet as a remarkable tool, but it would need to be harnessed with discipline. It mirrors the natural light of reason, powerful but easily corrupted by haste and bias. Would modern society use this tool to think as I did, or does it serve more as a crutch for thinking itself?
Your famous quote, "I think, therefore I am," is iconic, but what do you feel is most misunderstood about this phrase today?
Cogito, ergo sum. It is much recited, but often in ways that strip it of its true weight. People tend to interpret it as an affirmation of self-confidence, or the existence of self, but this misses the larger point. The phrase emerged from radical doubt. I doubted everything, the external world, the senses, the body, even the heavens. All could be illusions, but the very act of doubting proved that something must exist to do the doubting. The thinking is not merely the ego reflecting on its own being, but the relentless pursuit of certainty amidst the most extreme doubt. What is often overlooked is that this is not just a statement of existence, it is a statement about method. It reflects a journey into the depths of skepticism to find the one undeniable truth, thinking itself. But this must lead to further inquiry, not an endpoint of knowledge.
What did you think of emotion? Does it have a place in your philosophy?
My philosophy is often perceived as coldly rational, and in a way it is. I sought to establish clear and distinct ideas, rooted in reason. However, I wrote extensively about the passions. In Les Passions de l'âme, The Passions of the Soul, I argued that emotions are not necessarily irrational. They arise from interactions between the soul and the body. What is often overlooked is that I believed that emotions, when understood properly, could be governed by reason. They should not be dismissed or suppressed, but neither should they rule us. Rather, they are signals, useful ones, but only if we approach them with the right judgment. Emotions can help us, but they must be mastered by a rational mind.
Many people don't know that you had a fascinating relationship with Queen Christina of Sweden. Could you share what that was like and how it affected you?
My time with Queen Christina. It was one of the more unexpected chapters of my life. She was highly intellectual, deeply curious about philosophy, and admired my work. When she summoned me to Sweden in 1649, it was an opportunity to influence one of the great monarchs of Europe. However, the climate was harsh, both physically and intellectually. Queen Christina's expectations were rigorous. She demanded that I tutor her at dawn in the cold, which did not agree with my health. Ultimately, this experience led to my demise, as I fell ill during my stay and died soon after. Yet I admired her spirit and her hunger for knowledge. It is often forgotten how involved women, such as Queen Christina, were in the philosophical discourses of the time.
Your meditations on first philosophy tackled the existence of God in a unique way. Do you think that debate has evolved since your time?
Debate on the existence of God has been a constant companion of human thought. In my time, I presented what is now known as the ontological argument for God, an attempt to prove God's existence through reason alone. I argued that the idea of a perfect being must have been placed in us by something equally perfect, God. I am aware that the debate has become more polarized today. What concerns me is the shift from debate to dismissal. Skepticism is essential, but outright rejection without reasoned consideration is dangerous. Whether or not one believes in God, the question itself forces us to think about existence, morality, and the limits of human understanding. To dismiss the debate entirely, on either side, is to close off avenues of inquiry. And inquiry, as you know, is what I valued most.
Given your influence on the scientific method, how would you critique today's approach to science, especially in light of modern crises like climate change?
It pleases me to see that the scientific method has evolved and expanded beyond what I could have imagined. Yet the challenges you face now demand a deeper application of reason. Climate change, for example, is an issue where science intersects with politics, economics, and ethics. And here, the problem lies in the will to act, not in the lack of knowledge. What I see today is that science has become specialized, fragmented. There is brilliance in each field, but often a lack of synthesis. The method I proposed was universal, a means of understanding all phenomena through clear and distinct principles. Today's crises demand interdisciplinary thinking, combining empirical data with philosophical reflection. A mechanistic view of the world, useful though it is, cannot capture the full complexity of these moral dilemmas.
How do you view the relationship between technology and humanity? Has technology improved our capacity to think clearly, or has it hindered it?
Technology is a tool, and as with all tools, its value depends on how it is used. It can be an instrument for the expansion of knowledge, much like my own discovery of the power of geometry to explain the physical world. But there is a danger. Technology can obscure rather than illuminate the truth if it leads us away from reflection and towards superficial conclusions. What I fear is that humanity, in its embrace of convenience, may lose the habit of rigorous thought. The more you rely on technology to do the thinking for you, the more distant you become from your own capacity for reason. In my view, true knowledge requires a disciplined mind, one that can doubt, reflect, and analyze. Technology should assist this process, not replace it.
Many see you as a foundational figure for rationalism, but you also spoke about the limits of human knowledge. What do you think is the greatest boundary preventing us from understanding everything?
The greatest boundary lies in the very nature of human existence. We are finite beings attempting to grasp an infinite reality. Our senses, which we often rely upon for knowledge, can deceive us. This is the core reason I began my journey of doubt. Even the mind, which I believe to be our most reliable tool, can fall prey to error, assumption, and bias. But the boundary that perhaps troubles me most is the illusion of certainty. Often people believe they know when, in fact, they are merely assuming. We have the ability to reason, yes, but we must always remain aware of the limitations imposed by our condition as imperfect beings. The infinite, whether in nature, in mathematics, or in the concept of God, is beyond full comprehension for the finite mind. And yet, it is in reaching toward that limit, not in attaining it, where true growth occurs.
You had a very mechanistic view of the body, comparing it to a machine. How does that idea hold up in modern times with advances in neuroscience?
Indeed, I likened the human body to a complex machine, governed by the same principles that dictate the physical world. What many might not realize is that I believed the soul to be separate from this machine, an immaterial force responsible for consciousness and free will. The pineal gland, I hypothesized, was where the soul interacted with the body, a claim that seems strange by today's standards, though I stand by its symbolic importance. Neuroscience has undoubtedly advanced beyond what I could have imagined, revealing the intricate workings of the brain and its influence on behavior. Yet I would argue that while the brain may explain how we think, it does not fully explain why we think, or why we feel drawn towards certain higher truths. The mechanistic view of the body still holds value, but the essence of the mind, the self, remains elusive. I would still insist on some distinction between the workings of the mind and the functions of the body, though I admit the debate has only grown more complex.
You were both a philosopher and a mathematician. How do you think math and philosophy intersect, and why did you find both disciplines essential?
Mathematics and philosophy are two sides of the same coin. Both are concerned with certainty and truth, though they approach these in different ways. For me, mathematics provided a means to uncover truths about the natural world that were clear and distinct, free from the errors of sensory perception. My invention of the Cartesian coordinate system, which linked geometry and algebra, was an attempt to bring the clarity of mathematical reasoning to the study of space and motion. Philosophy, however, reaches beyond the physical world and asks questions about the nature of reality itself. It is in philosophy that I explored the limits of knowledge, the existence of God, and the essence of human consciousness. Both disciplines require precision, though one works through abstraction and logic, and the other engages with the deeper mysteries of existence. I could not separate them. For me, they formed a unified method for seeking truth.
Your method of doubt was revolutionary. Do you think modern philosophers are still using it effectively, or has it been lost in contemporary discourse?
Doubt is the foundation of wisdom, and in some ways, I fear it is not applied rigorously enough in today's philosophical and public discourse. The method of doubt that I proposed was not meant to lead to permanent skepticism, but to a clearer understanding of what can be known with certainty. It is a tool to strip away illusions and falsehoods, leaving behind only that which is indubitable. In contemporary discourse, I see much skepticism, but it is often unproductive. Doubt should not be an end in itself. It should lead to inquiry, to the refinement of ideas. What I see too frequently today is either blind rejection or blind acceptance, without the necessary process of methodical doubt that questions assumptions before drawing conclusions. To doubt is not to dismiss, but to seek deeper understanding. That subtlety, I fear, is sometimes lost.
If you could engage in a philosophical debate with any modern thinker, who would it be and why?
I believe I would be most intrigued by engaging with a philosopher such as Martin Heidegger. His exploration of being, or Dasein as he called it, seems to me an inquiry that resonates deeply with my own meditations on existence, where I focused on the certainty of self-consciousness. Cogito ergo sum, Heidegger sought to uncover the structures of being in the world, which opens up new dimensions of inquiry that were perhaps less emphasized in my time. I would be curious to see how Heidegger's existential questions intersect with my more rationalist approach. He takes us into the murky depths of existence, while I sought clarity and distinct ideas. The tension between our approaches would, I think, result in a dialogue that could push the boundaries of both frameworks. His concerns with the authentic self in a world of distractions would certainly resonate with today's viewers.
What are your thoughts on free will in the context of determinism? Does human freedom truly exist?
Free will, an eternal subject of debate. In my writings, I defended the notion of human freedom. I argued that free will was one of the defining attributes of the human soul, and while the body may be mechanistic, the will itself operates freely, independent of external constraints. Yet, even in my time, I acknowledged that the physical world operates under laws of cause and effect. The challenge, then, is to reconcile our experience of freedom with the determinism we observe in nature. I still maintain that the mind, being distinct from the body, operates on a different plane. The physical world may be deterministic, but the mind, as the seat of free will, can transcend these constraints. This dualism remains, to me, the key to understanding the human condition. Free will exists, though it may be conditioned by circumstances. Its reality is in the ability to reflect and choose, even if those choices are not entirely unconstrained.
Do you believe that modern science has replaced philosophy, or do you see them as complementary?
Philosophy and science are not competitors. They are companions in the search for truth. What troubles me is the growing belief that philosophy is now obsolete, that science alone can answer all questions. This is a grave error. Science can tell us how the world works. It can explain the mechanics of the universe, the laws of motion, and the workings of the human brain. But science cannot tell us why we exist or what it means to live a good life. These are questions that remain squarely within the realm of philosophy. Indeed, I believe science needs philosophy now more than ever, for without philosophical reflection, science can become unmoored from the deeper questions of ethics, meaning, and purpose. The two must work together, science to uncover the workings of nature, and philosophy to ensure that the knowledge gained is used wisely and thoughtfully.
It's often said that you lived a life of relative isolation. Do you believe solitude is necessary for deep thinking, or can one find clarity in a more connected social life?
I valued solitude because it allowed me to think without distraction, to pursue clarity through uninterrupted reflection. However, I do not believe that solitude is the only path to deep thinking. Indeed, some of the greatest ideas in history have emerged from dialogue, from the meeting of minds engaged in a shared inquiry. What solitude offers is time. It creates the space to slow down, to doubt, to question. In a more social, connected life, there is always the risk of being swept along by the current of opinion, rather than taking the time to reflect critically. But I would not discourage connection. The exchange of ideas is vital. The key is balance. One must engage with others, but also reserve the time for solitary reflection. Both are necessary for the life of the mind.
You wrote about the evil demon, an entity that could deceive you into believing false things. Do you think technology today could be seen as a modern evil demon?
The evil demon was a metaphor I employed to illustrate the possibility that everything we perceive could be false, that there might be a powerful force deceiving us at every turn. It was, of course, a thought experiment, a way of taking doubt to its logical extreme. In today's world, I do see parallels between my demon and your technology. Not in the sense that technology itself is malevolent, but rather that it can easily become a tool of deception. The algorithms that shape your digital experiences, the endless stream of tailored information, the echo chambers in which many find themselves, these are not so different from the illusions my demon might conjure. Technology, like the demon, can create a reality that is difficult to question, one that seems real but is built on manipulation. The challenge is to apply methodical doubt to this reality, to question the sources, the algorithms that shape your perceptions, and the assumptions they rest upon. In essence, today's technology could act as a modern evil demon by distorting your understanding of truth if you do not remain vigilant in questioning it. Many people are unaware that you had planned an encyclopedia of sciences. Could you tell us more about this unfinished project and why it was important to you? Ah, yes, my unfinished Rules for the Direction of the Mind was meant to be just the beginning of a much grander project, an encyclopedia of knowledge that would unify all branches of science and philosophy under a single coherent framework. My intention was to use the method I had developed, a process of doubt and clarity, to establish foundational truths in every field: physics, astronomy, medicine, and beyond. This work was vital because I believed that knowledge, in all its forms, could be approached systematically, much like mathematics. My hope was to reveal the interconnectedness of all sciences and to show how the same principles of clear and distinct reasoning could be applied across disciplines. The project was ultimately left unfinished due to various circumstances in my life, but I see modern encyclopedias and even your Wikipedia as continuations of this dream, repositories of knowledge, though they lack the unified structure I had envisioned.
If you were alive today, how would you apply your philosophical method to the political and social divisions we see in the modern world?
The political and social divisions that pervade modern society would concern me greatly, not because of the diversity of opinions. This, I think, is natural, but because of the lack of reasoned dialogue in resolving them. My method of doubt was never about rejecting ideas for the sake of skepticism, but about stripping away bias and prejudice to arrive at truths that are clear and distinct. In today's world, I would advocate for a return to rational discourse. The political arena has become driven by emotions, factions, and identity, often at the expense of reason. What is needed is a methodical process of questioning, not just others, but oneself. Each side must subject its assumptions and beliefs to the same level of scrutiny. Only through this rigorous reflection can genuine progress be made. The truth may be complex, but it is accessible to those who pursue it without ego, without the distractions of partisanship.
You were a practicing Catholic, yet your work sometimes bordered on ideas that were considered controversial by the Church. How did you reconcile your faith with your philosophy?
This was indeed a delicate balance. My faith was deeply important to me, and I believed in the existence of God as the ultimate guarantor of truth. However, I also believed that the pursuit of knowledge should not be constrained by dogma. I trusted that reason, if followed rigorously, would lead to truths that were in harmony with faith. For me, there was no conflict between reason and religion, because both pointed to the existence of a rational, orderly universe created by a divine being. I was aware that some of my ideas, particularly my mechanistic view of the natural world, could be seen as at odds with religious teachings. But I maintained that understanding the workings of God's creation through reason and inquiry was itself an act of devotion. In my time, this was not always well understood, and I had to be cautious in presenting my ideas. Yet I never saw my philosophy as undermining my faith. Rather, it was a way of deepening it.
Your work laid the foundation for rationalism, but how do you feel about more modern movements like existentialism, which focus on the subjective experience of the individual?
Existentialism presents a fascinating evolution of thought. Where I focused on certainty, the one thing that could not be doubted, the existence of the thinking self, existentialists like Sartre and Camus focus on the absurdity of life, on the struggle to find meaning in a world that seems indifferent. In some ways, existentialism builds on my work, though it takes it in a direction I might not have anticipated. My emphasis was on the mind's ability to reason, to doubt, and to establish truths. Existentialists take the opposite approach. They emphasize the uncertainties, the contradictions of human existence, and the inability to find absolute meaning. I would be curious to explore this line of thought further. While it is a divergence from my own, I recognize that it arises from the same core concern, the question of what it means to exist.
You have been criticized for your dualism, the idea that the mind and body are separate. How do you respond to modern scientists who argue that consciousness is purely a function of the brain?
My dualism was born out of a need to explain the distinctness of thought from matter. The body, I argued, operates under mechanical principles, but the mind, the soul, is something altogether different. It is conscious, self-aware, and capable of free will. These qualities, I believed, could not be reduced to the mere workings of physical matter. Modern neuroscience has indeed made remarkable progress in mapping the brain's functions, and I am fascinated by the discoveries. However, I remain cautious about the reductionist view that consciousness is only a function of the brain. While the brain may be the organ through which consciousness manifests, I believe there is more to the self than can be explained by neurons and synapses. Consciousness, self-awareness, the ability to reflect on one's own existence, these are phenomena that I believe suggest something beyond the purely physical.
Many people don't know that you were also a soldier for a period of your life. How did that experience influence your later philosophical work?
Indeed, my time as a soldier is often overlooked. I served briefly in the armies of several European powers during the early 17th century, including in the 30 Years' War. It was during this time that I began to reflect more deeply on the nature of certainty, order, and reason. The chaos and unpredictability of war stood in stark contrast to the clarity I sought in my philosophical work. It was also during this period that I had what I called my dream visions, in which I felt guided toward a new method of thinking. These experiences pushed me toward a belief in the power of reason to bring order to a disordered world. The discipline of military life, combined with the horrors of war, instilled in me a desire for structure, for a method that could cut through uncertainty and confusion. Thus, my time as a soldier, while brief, was formative in shaping my philosophical outlook.
In your time, skepticism was seen as a tool for reaching truth. Do you think modern skepticism, particularly with regard to science and facts, is productive or harmful?
Skepticism, when applied correctly, is one of the most powerful tools at our disposal for arriving at truth. My entire philosophy is built on the idea of methodical doubt, the questioning of everything until only that which is absolutely certain remains. However, skepticism must be disciplined. It is not an end in itself, but a means to greater understanding. What concerns me about modern skepticism, particularly in relation to science, is that it is often indiscriminate. People doubt not because they seek truth, but because they are disillusioned or distrustful of authority. This kind of skepticism can become destructive when it leads to the rejection of well-established facts without proper inquiry. True skepticism should be about refining our understanding, not undermining it. It must be paired with a willingness to engage with evidence, to follow where reason leads, rather than to reject ideas out of hand.
You died in Sweden under mysterious circumstances. Some believe foul play may have been involved. What do you say to those theories?
The circumstances of my death have indeed sparked some intrigue. Officially, it is recorded that I died of pneumonia after spending too much time tutoring Queen Christina in the cold early mornings. However, there are theories that suggest I may have been poisoned, perhaps due to my philosophical ideas or my influence in the court. While I cannot provide any definitive answers from beyond the grave, I will say this. My time in Sweden was difficult, and I was not in the best of health when I arrived. The climate did not suit me, and the rigorous demands of the Queen were taxing on my body. I do not believe that my death was the result of foul play, but rather of the harsh conditions I endured. Yet I do find it fascinating how even the circumstances of one's death can become a point of speculation and mystery.
Looking back, what do you believe is your greatest legacy?
If I am remembered for anything, I would hope it is for my method. The idea that we must doubt, question, and critically examine everything in order to arrive at clear and distinct truths. This, I believe, is my most enduring contribution. It is a method that can be applied to all fields of human inquiry, from philosophy to science to everyday life. But beyond that, I believe my greatest legacy is the invitation to think for oneself, to not accept the world as it is presented, but to dig deeper, to inquire, to doubt. It is not enough to know, one must understand how one knows. I see this as the foundation of all human progress. To question is to be truly alive.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the mind of René Descartes. His contributions to philosophy, mathematics, and the sciences continue to shape our world today, but it's his deep commitment to questioning and doubting that remains most relevant in our modern age. What questions would you ask Descartes? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more hypothetical conversations with history's greatest thinkers. Until next time.